in the real world. Ain't it fun? So, today, I'm going to give everyone an introduction to astrology. You are what they're feeding on, so what are you gonna do when the 12 signs don't wanna be you? So, now, I'm gonna say some basic information, some basic things. To start off, a very important number in numerology, and astrology, is the number 12. 12 is a very powerful number because it can be divided into many different things and can be turned into like a bigger numbers that are really cool. So yeah, it can be divided by 4 and 3 and 2, and it can be turned into 360 degrees, which is a circle. Now, originally back in the day, astrology began in ancient times in Mesopotamia, although it was quite different than it is today. And it continued in Egypt, and it went to Greece, and then Rome. And it really had an impact in Europe after that, well into the 20th century. A lot of royalty had their charts read, and famous people. And there was actually a movement that told people that it wasn't alright to continue with astrology because of the scientific movement. And now we're in a very scientific age, and astrology didn't quite meet up to that criteria because of the kind of evidence that we need to show astrology. Now, I'm in university, and I know that astrology is it's not accepted in this community. The other day I went, it's my 4th year, and I decided to take out books on astrology. And there was only 4 good ones, and even then, it wasn't even about astrology. It was kind of about the criticism of astrology, all the way back to the 17th century, so the 1600s, for those who don't know about that. Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? Ain't it fun? So back to the number 12. The 12 signs of the zodiac, which were kind of created throughout the ages. Capricorn, which is my sun sign, which I'll get into later, was one of the first. It was originally inspired by the god that came out of the sea, known as either Enki or Ea, spelled E-N-K-I or E-A, back in Mesopotamia. He was the bearer of knowledge, and this kind of inspired people to create the zodiac. And originally, there were 12, the Mesopotamians looked at the stars, and there were 12 constellations, although I think there might have been 10, or 11, or 13, and it's been studied for so long, and people that say now that they're making discoveries about a 13th sign is not true at all. Astrologers actually, it's very much an art, you could say. It's a science and an art in a way. But there's so much information, and you can really study and become an expert on it, and it's way more than people think. Horoscopes are a part of astrology, for sure, but many astrologers do not read their horoscopes, because people that really know about horoscopes know that an individual person is not just one sign, and you can't exactly predict specific information that's very much reliable for any one person in a magazine or newspapers. Although it's sometimes interesting, and sometimes you might pick it up and say, oh my gosh, this happened today, which could be true. Your sun sign, it just follows a very important part of your chart, which basically your chart explains the moment you were born, all of the it just shows the sky. The heavens is what we call the sky in astrology, the moment you were born. And not only your sun sign affects your personality, but your rising sign and your moon sign are actually more important. Now basically, For example, I'm a Capricorn sun with an Aquarius rising and a Gemini moon. Now you might hear stuff like that. Or you might hear someone say, "Your Uranus, your moon is in Uranus." And you're like, what? Even though your moon can't be in Uranus, your moon can be conjunct Uranus. Now, there's a lot of words like conjunct and semi-quartile and trilinguolaterally, or like trine or square. Now, if you look at a chart and you see a triangle of planets, that's a trine. And you see, but that's way... I didn't begin studying that until way down the line. I started reading and studying astrology when I was 8, and maybe when I was like 20, I started to look at charts. So it took me 12 years, but that's because I started with sun signs, and then I kind of started to look at moon signs, and I started to look at Chinese astrology, which is another sect that started pretty much independently of Western astrology, which is the signs that we know from Aries to Pisces. Now, there's 12 signs, and I'm going to say how they can be divided. Each sign can be divided into its element. Now, people might be like, I'm a fire sign. I'm not on fire. Like, where's the fire? Where is it? But anyway, fire signs, if you have a sun fire sign, or if you have a lot of fire in your chart, you tend to be a fiery person, possibly. Fire tends to be creative, in a sense, spontaneous, prideful. You could say energetic, but I wouldn't necessarily. For the most part, optimistic. It depends, but the element of a sign depends on its quality. Now, there's 4 elements, 3 qualities, 2 frequencies, I guess. I mean, there's different polarities, and there's different planets. Now, this is basically how what makes each sign different and unique from others. The qualities basically say how, like, in what method do you use that element, and how does it mix? And considering they're divided by 4, 3, 2s, and 1s, that means each sign will have its unique element and quality mixture. Now let's look at the first sign, Aries, which is fire and cardinal. Fire is an initiator element, and cardinal is an initiator quality. So this makes Aries very initiatory in its energy. So if you have the sun sign, Aries, the sun is the center of the galaxy, or the center of our Milky Way. So this means it's the center of you. It represents actually who you truly are underneath everything, in a sense, and what your spirit or will is, kind of. So this would make this one person, and it's at its core, an initiator, in quite a lot of ways. And, oops. Okay, sorry about that. And to really explain this really well, I try to get my point across. Each sign is next to another sign, and the signs that the sign is next to tend to be very different than the sign that isn't, you know? So, like, Aries is next to Taurus. Aries is initiator. Taurus is obstinate. It's like, don't push me. And Aries is like, I want to push you. And then Taurus won't like it. So it's like kind of energy that doesn't get along. But that's how each 12 sign is separated. And it is represented in a circle because the sign can also have an opposite. And it can have a sign that is squared, which means there's 4 squared signs. One of them is opposite, one of them is squared. And it kind of shows how they relate to one another. But anyway, the triangles generally show if a triangle on the chart of the 12 signs, one point of the equilateral triangle and another point of the equilateral triangle would be the same element. So the square makes the same quality, the triangle makes the same element, and opposite signs are the same quality, but they're the opposite element. Now, there's the signs can also be divided into polarities, I guess. negative or positive, which can also be called feminine and masculine, which doesn't necessarily correlate to the general idea of masculine and feminine in today's society, in my opinion. But I can get into that in another video, because today I'm not going to do it. And the video is getting quite long, so I'm just gonna try to shorten it a bit. And then we have planets. So each sign also has a planet, but originally there was, I guess you could say, 6 planets. I'll simplify it that way. And each planet ruled over 2 signs. So Aries and Scorpio had the same planet, and there's actually a pattern. I can't really explain the pattern, but it's a really cool pattern. And Venus ruled over Taurus and Libra, etc., etc. Ruled over, basically, I can get into explaining. Each planet has its qualities and energy to it, which influences each sign. And the sun sign in someone's chart, or what they were born at, is when the sun was, where the sun was when someone was born, affects a majority of that person's energy or personality at the core, which some people, I can explain this in another video, believe that after the age of 30 is when the sun sign is truly active. It takes 30 years, and this can be explained by another planet, Saturn, restricts your chart until you reach the age of 30, which is called the Saturn return, because it takes 30 years for the planet Saturn to go around the sun. Now this is really complicated, I understand. And so I'll have to elaborate on this in future videos. But I'm hoping you, and this is just basically a very beginning of my channel, and I hope to somehow inform people, and I hope to get practice, because I'm kind of erratic, and I'm not used to talking to a camera. So yeah, there's a lot of information when it comes to astrology, and I tried giving you basic information. I tried explaining it as best as I can, but sometimes it's not easy. See you in future videos.